York's very own muscle building coaches, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, proudly present to you New York Muscle Radio.
Can't rap this. You can't rap this. You can't rap this. You can't rap this. I am trying so hard, wasting paper by the yard. Got this weird shit gear. What the heck am I gonna do with this? Now I should have this whole thing down. A super dope rap from the pole town, but these look like crap, cause this is a gift. You can't rap.
What's up, guys? New York Muscle Radio flooding your feed with the 12 Days of Fitness podcast, day 11. We're bringing back all the classic episodes, and in this one, we teach you guys how to build muscle, not fat, during the holidays. If you're a new listener, welcome to the best muscle building radio show. It's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, alongside my co-host, Big Pete Kacharian. And I like that song, man, because I can't rap for nothing, the life of me. I can't rap gifts for the life of me at all.
Oh, man, you think you can't rap? So you should come over to my house, man.
Does that mean you're horrible?
I don't know. Maybe it means I'm good.
I don't know. I hate, that's like one of the things I hate doing the most. It's nice when you get married, man. One of the perks is just give everything to your wife and just say, oh, can you rap this for me?
That's right, guys. Tip number 1 on New York Muscle Radio. If you can't rap gifts, get married.
Yeah, and then what I usually do is when with her gifts, right? Because I'll wrap her gifts sometimes, but then they just come out so horrible. So what I'll do is I put her gifts in a box, and I give it to her, and I tell her, listen, Jen, can you wrap this? It's a gift for, like, Pete. And then she'll wrap it, and then I'll just give it to her on Christmas.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I'm more of a gift bag guy because I can't rap. So I just get a gift bag and just put it in the bag.
Yeah, that's the easy way out, though, man. But what if it can't fit in the bag? Can't fit in the bag.
Get a bigger bag, man.
Yeah, but it depends what it is.
I guess I don't buy gifts that big.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's not always the size that matters.
Yeah, hence why I use a regular size condom.
Good one.
Is it? Wait, what the hell's that joke? Oh, I can't think of it. It's like a tadpole and I can never remember these things when it comes time to record. I remember them later. You ever hear the one with the small cock in the? It's like a garbage bag. Or
I don't know. I don't often hear small cock jokes. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what do you want to do? I'm not gonna be one of those guys. How do we get into this? I don't want to be one of those guys that says.
You started it, man.
Yeah, all right. Well,
as usual.
Listen, it's the holidays, man. What's wrong with you? Your mind's in the gutter on the holidays.
You started it, man. I was talking about gift sizes.
You were talking about wrapping things and putting things inside things.
Hey, listen, that's where your mind wanders. That's not my fault.
Yeah, okay. But who has the higher testosterone on this table here?
I don't know. Maybe it's debatable.
I guess so. Guys, make sure you check out our December sale. Let's get our entire New York Muscle Radio library and a bottle of caffeine with free shipping for one low price. Head on over to NewYorkMuscleRadio.com and check that one out. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, NewYorkMuscleRadio.com/video. And guys, also, I don't have a question of the day here, but again, you can call your questions in. This is going to be big in the new year for us. So again, the number is 508-687-2534. And you can head on over to NewYorkMuscleRadio.com, so it's listener question, and you'll find the phone number there if you want to call in. But I think that's a cool feature, man. I like that. I'm excited about that. We did that, I believe it was 2 days ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to actually, sometimes people write questions and maybe some of the information might get a little lost in translation. So hearing it called in definitely makes it a little easier. I think it's a little more entertaining for listeners to actually hear the questions. So anybody who has a question, feel free. We'll answer it live on the podcast for you guys. So any question you guys have, even if you want to know what Anthony does between the hours of 8 p.m. and 12 a.m., what I do the rest of the night, it's all fair game.
Funny thing is, it rings on my phone, right? So when Sean West called in, it rang. It was like a weird area call. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I don't answer. If it's not on my phone, I never answer it because it's just whatever. And I'm like, I think I know what that is. And then he left the question. So I was excited. So again, guys, be sure to call. Doesn't matter what time of day. I might answer it, actually. You might actually get me one day. You may trick me, and I may answer the phone. Man, what are you doing for New Year's next week?
I actually don't have any plans for New Year's yet. I've been really low key with New Year's the last couple of years. I haven't done anything too exciting since maybe 2012. To be honest with you, it was probably the last New Year's I really went all out. I guess I'm getting old, man.
Yeah, you're definitely getting old, man. Yeah, I'm gonna be in the Bahamas.
Oh wow, really? Man?
Yeah,
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah,
that's exciting. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in the Bahamas during the New Year. I've done that once before, and it's really, really cool. Like to be away and just having the ball drop. It's so nice, and looking forward to just being in shorts and a tank top again, and not long sleeves, sweatpants, jackets, hoods, hats. Ugh.
Yeah, I went to Times Square to watch the ball drop, probably 2010 maybe, and I was in my 20s doing it. It's not like I was young where I wanted to see it when I was a kid. I don't know. I had the opportunity to go do it, and it was one of those years where it was snowing, it was raining, it was freezing. It was just not worth it. I mean, a lot of people come from all around the world to go see the ball drop in Times Square, like it's the greatest thing. And I mean, I'm sure if you're not from New York, or if you're from anywhere else and you want to do it for the experience, it's probably fun. But I did that, and the second the ball dropped, I said, all right, guys, let's get on the train and go back right now.
Oh, well, I didn't know you did that. That's cool. So is it crowded as hell?
Oh, it's terrible. It's so crowded, but we actually were able, me and my group of friends, we were able to get right in the front, right underneath the ball. So we got as close as you could actually get to the ball. So we got the full experience. But like I said, it was raining, it was snowing, it was freezing. And, you're just standing there for hours basically to wait till the countdown for the few seconds for the ball to drop. And like I said, right after that, all right, guys, let's go, hit the train.
What time did you end up getting there?
It's probably in the city, maybe. It's hard to remember right now, but maybe around 8 or 9 o'clock. So you're really just standing around for hours, and once you get in line like that, you can't get off, or else you lose your spot. So you're just standing there waiting for the ball to drop.
Were there girls around you?
I was with my girlfriend at the time. I was with my cousin and his girlfriend too. So that's what was going on there.
Oh, I thought you would have had a cool single guy story. That blew it.
No, single Pete probably wouldn't have done that. That was more like take your girlfriend to see the ball drop type of thing.
So did you kiss your girlfriend on New Year's, or did you just say, oh hey?
Of course, why not? Why wouldn't I?
You're not romantic.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
I can never see you holding a girl's hand, putting your arm around her. I can never see you do that.
Hey, I guess there's a time and place for everything, right?
No, that's before you want to, put on the garbage bag.
What garbage bag?
Oh, God. What are you going to do, man? Yeah, so I'm excited. I'll be in the Bahamas. It'd be nice. But I had this crazy dream the other day, right? I had this crazy dream that me and you moved to Florida.
Yeah, I think is your conscience telling you something?
Well, listen, I've been wanting to move out of New York for a while, and I think I may put it actually on the list of things to do. It's just hard to kind of up and pick up your life. I mean, I'm not worried not to see my family anymore because, I've always kind of been a little bit independent, and they would always come visit me, and it'd be a vacation for them, so it'd be cool. But, just to kind of pick up and go, relocate my wife's job, I have to find something down there too, Unless the podcast takes off and I'm able to go down there scot-free. I would love to, though, man. I really would. But in the dream, it was just me and you had an apartment in Florida. That's all I remember from the dream. You ever get that point, those vivid, stupid little snippets of a dream?
Yeah, that's usually what you remember, just the snippets, not the whole picture,
So who knows, man? Maybe in 2017 we'll be down in Florida and never have to worry about winter again. That'd be nice.
Hey, man, I'm game. I got nothing tying me down,
All right, guys. So in today's episode, we teach you guys how to build muscle and not fat during the holidays. But before we get on to that, let's move on to the shout-outs portion of this podcast. Again, guys, if you want a shout-out, you can head on over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/New York Muscle Radio, or you could follow us and comment on our Instagrams. I'm at AB Fitness and Pete's at Jacked Fitness, JAKKED Fitness. So go ahead, Pete, read some comments there.
We actually got, we have a few of them, but it's funny. We have one I actually wanted to give credit to. We have one of our sponsored athletes, Mitch Jacobson, actually. He posted a video and he tagged me in it, and I said, what is this? And I looked at it, and he's if you see, he's doing calf raises with the stack, and it looks like he has a dip belt on an additional 90 pounds on top of it. So he's rocking the calf raise machine, and he's got additional weight on there, and he said, don't skip calf day. Turning those calves into cows. And he tagged me in it and said, let's make these babies grow, So it's been a while since someone called me out on the calf training, so I thought it was funny. It's been a long time since we mentioned it. And, sadly, since we have mentioned it, my calves probably have not grown. And to be totally truthful, I haven't been training them for a long time. We did just start incorporating them again. It's one of those things, as far as my goals right now, it doesn't make a difference if my calves grow or they don't. I would love to grow some extra calves, but, I guess genetically, I just never had it in store for me. I could probably, at best, get them to look like average calves. So that's the goal. I don't think I'm ever going to have some cows. So for all you guys out there who are able to turn your baby calves into cows, shout out to you guys, man. But yeah, let's move on to some shout outs portions that we got on some Facebook likes. So today I'm going to be butchering the names, so we'll take some of the heat off Anthony today, and you guys can rip on me for this one.
Yes, that's exactly why I handed you the phone.
So we'll start, shout out to Joshua Hauserman. Shout out to, man, this is a hard one.
Yeah, good luck, man. How old are you?
Eccentrius Perez, I believe it's Eccentrius. Shout out to Mac Jones. That's an easy one. Mac Jones, I like that name. Shout out to Brian Hickman, Joe Melendez, Victor Manuel, Erica Kelly. This name is actually Stonathan Jout. Interesting, because I would think it would be Jonathan Stout, but the name is actually Stonathan Jout. Jonas Loze, Luke Timmons, John Bebo Main, Claudia Tumega Dogbull. That's a hard one, man. Matthew Boatwright, Annie Dinu, Jason Donders, and Anthony J. Stark.
All right. Also, here, read this. This is from one of our another sponsored athlete here. Read from my legs are starting to feel really stiff, and you could call her out.
Okay, so this is on
Instagram.
Instagram, shout out to Yoga Valley Fit. She's also one of our New York Muscle Radio sponsored athletes. That's Tanya O'Gorman. So if you want to give her a follow, Yoga Valley Fit. She says, my legs are really starting to feel stiff from the morning workouts too. This week has been the first week since my injury that I have been able to do all my workouts as written down. It was only training at 65% today, so I thought it was going to be easy, but damn, 10 reps on deadlift is definitely cardio. She's laughing and said, always want to lift heavier for fewer reps, but after listening to the recent New York Muscle Radio podcast about programming, I know it's counterproductive to try to max out each session, so following my coach's advice and doing my cardio lifting instead. I'm sure there will be strength gains at the end of the tunnel. So shout out to Tanya for that. She actually, she suffered a bit of an injury and she wasn't able to squat or deadlift too heavy. And just this week, she's been able to kind of get to the actual numbers we did prescribe for her training. But yeah, starting out with 65% and doing sets of 10 on squats and deadlifts is absolutely cardio. And, you think it looks light, so it's going to be easy, but high rep squats and deadlifts is one of the hardest things you could do in the gym.
All right, guys, one more thing, while we end this off on day 11 here, I also want to note, I want to thank all of you guys, and I'm just going to read this off. It's just easier if I read this off. So I wrote this on our Facebook page. So I said, hey, guys, the new year is approaching fast, and we really want to thank each and every one of you for being great listeners / clients, but we need your help. In order to make New York Muscle Radio better and keep growing, what do you guys want to see from us? What do you want to hear less of? What can we change, or what can we add? And again, we do this for you guys, and we are looking for your feedback to make the podcast better. So head on over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/New York Muscle Radio. Let us know, or you could send us an email, newyorkmuscleradio@gmail.com, because we're taking your considerations in, since every time you subscribe and download an episode, this becomes your podcast. So all right, let's take this short commercial break, and we'll be right back with building muscle and not fat during the holidays.
What's up, New York Muscle Radio listeners? It's your co-host, Big Pete Kacharian, and I'm glad you're all listening. Put down that tilapia and asparagus. Learn how to get bigger, stronger, and leaner eating what you want. Pick up a copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. But for now, let's get to the show.
But I'll tell you what, when I'm done, my biceps are humongous. Humongous. Like that, bang!
My name is Anthony Bevilacqua, and I'm the host of New York Muscle Radio podcast. My arms have been a weak point for years. When I started training, my arms measured 11 inches. Even after many years of hardcore training, nothing would get them to grow. With the help of my co-host, Big Pete, we set out on a mission to gain 1 solid inch to my arms in 12 weeks.
In the greatest experiment of all.
12 weeks later, this program finally helped me get 18-inch arms. The 12-week arm experiment, the ultimate arm growth program, ebook, the audio book, and the workout video. Pick up your copy now on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. All right, guys, we're back. New York Muscle Radio, episode 22. So me and Pete got on the line here. John Gorman. John, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, great, man. I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
It's an honor to have you on here. So let's get right into it because we got a lot of topics to cover today, and we're super excited to have you on and learn from one of the best in the industry. So who is John Gorman?
Well, I'm a prep coach. I started out back in 2007 as a personal trainer, and since 2010, I've just been prepping people for bodybuilding competitions, all over the United States, actually all over the world. We even have someone competing in Japan, actually, as I'm sitting here. So I'm a prep coach. It's my full-time job. And, I work with all kinds of athletes, whether they're powerlifters, CrossFitters, bodybuilders, or, sometimes even just the mom of 3 that needs to lose weight. We have something for everyone.
Oh, very cool, man. So have you always been a prep coach, or how did you start out in the industry?
Well, I started out in 2007 as a personal trainer part-time, and I used to manage an Anytime Fitness. So I did that from 2007 to 2010, and I started building up my clientele, in the one-on-one business, and I started helping people get ready for shows. So in 2010, we started taking people to some NPC shows here in the area, and one of my clients won the overall. Her name was Jessie Dale. And from then on, it just kind of exploded. So it got to where I was so busy managing a gym and trying to help people that I just went full-time with my business, Team Gorman.
Wow, that's awesome. So how did it spread online pretty much? What do you think it was? Really from word of mouth, or did you do any promotional stuff online? How did you feel like you earned that online presence?
Definitely. One of the things, I didn't even start a website until 2011, 2012. Facebook was huge for us, and I'm not a hard sell type of person. So really what I did, back in 2010 when Jessie won the overall and our other clients in that show did well, what I did is I would put their pictures up. They were 7 weeks out, and I'd put up their progress pictures. 5 weeks out, I put out more progress pictures, and people actually loved that, and they started to follow it. So by the time they got to stage, we had people following them to stage, and then they saw how well they did, and then word just kind of spread that way. Facebook is, as you guys know, social media is phenomenal. So really, all of our growth has just been organic. I post about our clients and everything that we do, and I don't try and cram anything down people's throats, and it's a nice, soft approach, and it's worked well over the years.
Yeah, I'd say so. You have a huge following online. I think your Team Gorman page has a lot of followers on it. It was some ridiculous number I saw the other day, and I was like, wow. So that's good. That's awesome for you, man. And like I said, I found you actually through one of my friends. He actually posted one of your articles on your blog that you have, and I've been following you ever since. And I'm like, wow, this guy really knows his stuff. I kind of didn't know who you were beforehand, and after that article, I read it. I think it was about high intensity cardio. I was just been following you, and I saw the ebook come out, and I said, I got to have this guy on the podcast. These are topics that I want to know about, so I know my listeners would want to know about. So tell us a little bit about the book that's coming out.
Yeah, actually, it's in pre-sale, the pre-sale portion right now. I just announced that Monday, and it's not just an ebook, it's actually a hard copy as well. And it's called Metabolic Capacity and Reverse Dieting, and the subtitle is How to Prime Your Metabolism to Achieve Maximum Fat Loss. And I've always wanted to write a book, and I kept putting it off until we had a decent enough following. But most importantly, to when I actually had the experience with enough clients to be able to write something and feel 110% confident. If someone questioned me on it or they wanted to know more, that I had the experience in the background to be able to back it up. So, this has been a long time in the making, and reverse dieting and metabolic adaptation and the things that we're going to talk about today. those are huge trending topics right now, and they have been for the last 2 or 3 years. So to finally be able to put out a book on it has been it's been a process, but I really looked forward to it, and now it's here. So it's blowing up. It's going nuts. The first week, I think the first day we had 200 people order a book, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but when I just did the self-publishing myself, and didn't have an editor or anything, so it's really kind of blown us away this first week, just how busy we've been with it. A lot of people are so interested in coming off a show or coming off a diet, not putting on a ton of fat, that the feedback has been great so far with people ordering the book.
So do you feel like you learned most of your stuff through trial and error with clients? I don't know if you're credentialed. Do you have like a bachelor's or anything, or master's degree or anything like that? I'm just curious.
Sure. Actually, I do. I have a bachelor's degree in sports management with a concentration in fitness and wellness. And then I have a master's degree in management and leadership. So it's, I don't have a PhD in, sports nutrition or anything like that. A lot of it has been in the trenches experience. And honestly, this topic today comes from, me messing clients up way back when I first started in 2007. I would start their calories way too low. I didn't know. And I would watch these adaptations occur over the years and wonder, why aren't these people able to lose weight? They're not eating but 1,100, 1,200 calories. Why aren't they losing? So it's been experience, and it's been a lot of trial and error over the years, and then figuring out how to slowly fix it. So that's one of the things I'm proud of with the book. I do have the research posted in the back. There's around a dozen studies, and there's a lot of good data in the back, but it's not something that I just researched and put together. It comes from a lot of experience.
And I tell people this all the time. You could have all this. I actually run a gym with a ton of personal trainers, and I tell everyone this. You could have all the degrees, all the certifications, but if you don't have the experience behind to back you, you're not going to get anywhere. So I actually like, exactly where you're coming from. The School of Hard Knocks is kind of the best way to learn and to be able to teach people, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, me too. I agree 100%.
All right, so let's get started. So let's start out with body fat set point. So a lot of people don't understand what that term means. So body fat set point, give us a rundown. What is body fat set point?
Okay, it's called really the body fat set point theory. And it's the idea that we all have this genetic or this preset body fat level where we operate, and I'll use the word optimally, where we feel good in the gym, we're strong, where we're eating a decent amount of calories, but we're not gaining a lot of body fat, but we're not losing any either. But most importantly, it's our body fat level somewhat contributes to our hormonal profile, so our testosterone levels, our thyroid hormone, things of that nature. So I'll give you a real quick example. Say I'm going to diet down for a show, and I weigh 205 pounds now, and I'm 15% body fat, and I feel great at this level. I diet down for 20 weeks, and as people, and we'll talk about this as we get on the podcast, as you diet down, your hormone profile changes. Your testosterone levels drop, your thyroid hormone is less and less secreted, so your metabolism slows down, and you get all the way down to 4 or 5% body fat, and your hormones are suppressed. So when your body fat is very, very low down there, that's an example of how your body fat set point is at one place. When you start, you diet down, your body fat level's low. At most people, like for me, where I feel good and where my body wants to remain normal is 15%. I'm not going to be able just to stay down at 4%. That's where a lot of people, they don't understand. When you diet down, your body is not normally going to stay very, very lean. Your hormones they're just not optimal on that level. So after you diet for a show, say you're at 4% body fat, there's going to be a period of time where you're going to get back to your normal body fat set point. Now, the whole key in this book is, if I'm going to end back up at 205 pounds, I don't want to end there in 2 to 3 weeks. I think we all, either we've done it ourselves or we know people that have just gorged themselves in the weeks after a show and put all their body fat on plus some. So the idea is to get.
You mean that's not muscle, the 10 pounds I gained overnight?
Yeah, right, bro. Right. It's there's not that rebound effect that everyone thinks that they're just going to fill out and put all this muscle on. So the idea is to get back to that set point slowly, not within a month. So that kind of gives people an idea what the body fat set point is. I know a lot of people diet, and I'll use a female for example that's not competing. She sees a lady on the cover of Oxygen magazine. She's like, I just want to diet this 20 pounds off and get some abs and then just maintain that. But if she's not genetically set up to stay that lean and her hormones are just completely suppressed down there when she does get that lean, she's going to rebound. She's going to put some fat on, even if she reverse diets very, very strictly. She's still not going to be able to maintain a real low body fat level. So that's just kind of an idea of what the body fat set point theory is.
Do you think you could change your body fat set point, or kind of like where your body, kind of stays? So if given your example that you just gave, 15% is your comfortable point, you diet down to 4. Do you think you could maintain in an off season comfortably somewhere in the middle and make that kind of like your new set point?
Yeah, that's a great question. And here's the thing. Some people can. So it depends on the reverse diet afterwards, first and foremost, but a lot of it depends on where your hormones are when you diet down. So I will say I have people that have reverse dieted perfectly with me for 12 weeks. And they've stayed very, very lean. The guy on the cover of the book actually did that. He stayed extremely lean, and he feels really, really, really good. He's like, I don't know, 7 pounds over stage, but I mean,
Wow.
he's extremely lean, and he feels good, and he's strong. Now, I've had other people do that, and they went and had their hormone profiles checked. They've been to the doctor, and here's what happens a lot of the time. Their hormones are still suppressed because their body fat levels haven't gotten back up. So, I've helped people like a guy go from 1,800 calories up to 3,000 and only gain 5 pounds. And he looks great, but his testosterone levels are still real low. And his thyroid is still slow. And even though he looks good and he's eating a lot, his body fat levels have started to keep those hormones suppressed. So that's one of the things. I don't know if that's going to be a lifestyle for him to be able to stay that low with his hormones suppressed. So, and here's the other thing, leptin. A lot of people listening, they're probably not familiar with leptin. Leptin stays suppressed too because body fat dictates the amount of leptin that's produced in your body. So when you go to eat, if you have low body fat levels, less leptin is secreted, so you don't have that feeling of being full. So in the off season, you have more body fat on your body. When you actually eat a meal, more leptin is secreted because it's dictated by your body fat levels, and you can actually feel full. So even if you're eating a lot of food in the off season, but you're still super, super lean, you're still going to feel hungry all the time. Your hormones are suppressed. So I have seen people not necessarily change their set point, but I've seen them maintain a lower body fat set point. But their hormone profiles have shown that it may not be a lifestyle for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I totally get that, because that's a common question that I come across. Can body fat set point change? And
Yeah.
I think you answered it pretty well. I guess it's really going to depend on the person too. And I guess
Yeah,
and I would say how long they were reverse dieting and how long they're willing to kind of stay there. I think it takes some time for your body to kind of catch up to what you're doing also.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I was going to point out, you guys are probably familiar with Lane Norton. Lane is usually a guy, if I remember right, he's like 220 pounds in the off season, and lately, this last year, he's been down in the lower 200s, and he's been powerlifting, and he's at his strongest ever. I mean, he has world records, and he's been killing it. And he is very, very lean. He's only like 10 pounds over stage. So that I've been watching that closely. And if someone has changed their body fat set point, I think Lane is a good example because he's eating a lot of food. His body fat's very low, and he's extremely strong. So, I don't know what his hormone profile looks like. I would be curious to see what that does look like. Obviously that's not something that we're all going to find out, but
You never know.
does. Yeah. I mean, it does show that, someone like Lane has done very, very well with possibly altering his body fat set point. So, that's a conversation that I would like to have with him sometime in the future.
It's funny that you say that because I actually wrote an article about nutrition for powerlifting, and I actually used Lane as an example because he is so lean. Like you said, he's 10 pounds away from stage weight, competing and breaking world records. So I do think that, there's something there, and I'm glad you actually used that example.
Yeah,
All right, so
yeah.
let's move on now. So what is metabolic adaptation, with that said?
Okay, so the best way that I can explain metabolic adaptation is a slow, well, actually, it could be fast. It's an adaptation to the amount of calories that you're used to eating. So, I'm a guy, whenever I call in on podcasts, I like to use examples. So I'll use an example here.
I think examples help people learn better, so go ahead. Use
Yeah.
as many as you want.
Exactly. So say there's a 200-pound guy in the off season eating 3,000 calories, and he's going to diet down for a show. And he diets for 20 weeks, and he loses 30 pounds. And his calories go from 3,000 at the start of the prep, and he ends up getting to stage, and his calories are down around 1,800 calories, and that's normal. Some guys don't have to get that low. Some guys have to get leaner. But 1,800, if I saw a guy weighing 180 pounds or 170 pounds eating 1,800 calories at the very end of their diet, that's normal. That's 10 times body weight. So what happens is, his body was used to 3,000 calories in the off season. After 20 weeks of dieting, his metabolism has actually adapted down and slowed down and has gotten used to 1,800 calories. Now, there's a whole lot of reasons why that happens. Everyone that diets, your muscle is you're going to strip some muscle off. I don't care how slow you diet. You're going to lose some muscle because it's just going to happen, especially with a natural athlete. So what happens is your thyroid hormone has to actually secrete less and less as you lose weight and as you lose muscle. Because, if you lose weight at 200 pounds, by the time you get down to 170, if you're still secreting the same amount of thyroid hormone, your body temperature would rise, and that's not a good thing. And your body is always trying to maintain homeostasis. So it's a natural, I call it a defense mechanism, but it's a natural mechanism to actually lower your thyroid hormone in conjunction with your body getting lighter. If not, your temperature would rise, and there's all kinds of problems associated with that. So that gives you kind of just a snapshot of metabolic adaptation. And there's severe adaptation, and a lot of people will coin the term metabolic damage. And I really talk about that a lot in the book. When people actually stay too low calorie for too long, Weight Watchers is an example, and a lot of these other fad diets where people are put on these 1,000-calorie diets and they try and stick with them for a year. Their metabolism has adapted to those 1,000 calories, and it leads to easier fat gain. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that as the show goes on, but that's kind of how someone's metabolism adapts to lower calories.
And I know you said that it varies from person to person, but on the average, from your experience, about how long do you think it takes for the person to hit that point? Is it as soon as they leave their set point, or do you notice it after a certain X amount of weeks dieting? I mean, just an average. I know every person is different based on your experience.
Really, the main thing I think that contributes is what has happened leading up to the start of the diet. One of the main things I try and preach to people is they need to spend as much time away from being at a caloric deficit as possible, just to keep their metabolism and their body used to off-season or higher calories. So say someone has been a yo-yo dieter, or someone's dieted for a lot of shows in the last 3 years, and they're constantly dieting once or twice a year. When that person goes to diet, I've noticed it's extremely hard to get body fat off of them, and it takes a long, long time. So I see them adapt to each calorie change a lot faster than I do the person that's been off season for 3 years and hasn't dieted at all. And then it's like the fat just likes to melt off of those folks because their body's not so used to dieting. So that's one of the main things I think tells me how to watch for the adaptation process.
So yeah, I tell people all the time, especially coaching clients all the time, your diet starts in the off season, and I think it's important to build up a strong calorie base in the off season. Have your athletes, like you said, you don't want to be maintaining your weight, 2,000 calories, in the off season. You want to be able to bring that as high as you can. Would you agree with that?
110%. I mean, you're right on the money. Here's the thing. I think a lot of people are scared after they diet. I think that they're scared of weight gain. And I see it mostly in females, because most guys, I mean, they'll just go back to eating before they'll try and keep their calories low. That's just what I've seen over the years. But most females, they seem to be a little bit more timid about adding back in calories, or they don't know what to do. And a lot of coaches don't know what to do. And there's a lot of people out there that they're getting ragged on for not getting their clients' calories up. I don't think coaches are out there trying to destroy people's metabolism. I just think they don't really know what to do. So what they end up doing after the diet's over, say if a female figure competitor gets done dieting and she ends up at 1,200 calories and doing quite a bit of cardio, most people, either themselves or their coaches, they think the best way to maintain that look is just to leave their calories low. And it's actually the worst thing that someone can do, because that just keeps your hormones suppressed. It keeps your metabolism suppressed. I mean, hell, who wants to eat 1,200 calories for a year just to try and maintain that? So, I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have out there, where people actually need to work to get their calories up.
Exactly. So with your athletes, when you get them, if someone wants to come to you for contest prep, do you maybe start them on something a little higher, or do you just, if someone came to you and was consuming 2,000 calories in the off season, do you tell them, no, we can't diet right now. We need to build up your metabolism first?
I do. And here's the thing. I'm fortunate enough to where I can be very, very picky and choosy. I've turned away a couple people just in the last couple days that have been dieting too much, and now they're off season and they haven't gotten their calories up enough to where I tell them, listen, don't waste your money. Don't waste my time and your time, because we're just going to spin your wheel. So I will turn people away. And I do have a reverse dieting article up on my website that I wrote for people. And, someone doesn't have to spend money with me to get some help. I send them the article, and I try and explain it to them, say, listen, you really need to understand what needs to happen next before you try and start a prep. So use the 2,000 calorie diet as an example. If that's a guy, man, there's just no way. I mean, think about what I'm going to have to do to this guy to get him stage ready. If he needs to lose 30 pounds and he's only eating 2,000 calories, he's going to be doing hours of cardio, and he's going to be on super low calories. And that, I have a reputation that I've worked for really, really hard over the years of not just wrecking people. So I just won't do it. I won't bring them on board. But I do try and steer them in the right direction and get them some help. Now, we do have other coaches. My fiance, Leslie Franklin, also works with competitors. She's a heck of a prep coach. We also have Josh Hebb and Christina Russell, and I do refer them over to them to get some help restoring their metabolism. They work with a lot of clients in that arena.
That's awesome. That shows that you're a great coach.
Thanks, man.
So how do you avoid metabolic adaptation then, and stalling pretty much on the diet? So what are the tips and tricks that you use for your clients?
Okay, well, the thing is with stalling, and like I said, everything is dependent upon what's happened leading up to the start of the diet. So let's just say everything is in a good place. Off-season calories are up, metabolism's good, no one's dieted for a year, and we're going to start prep. So stalling out it's a natural process, because like I said earlier, your thyroid hormone has to actually secrete less and less as your body weight drops and your body fat drops down. So that stalling is a normal thing, because if someone starts their diet on 2,500 calories and they lose, say, 8 pounds, and then all of a sudden they stop losing. Well, it's because they're still eating 2,500 calories, but their thyroid has actually slowed down a little bit to make up for the 8 pounds lost. So, what do? You add in a little bit of cardio, and you drop either carbs or fats, depending on the diet, just a little bit. So stalling is a normal thing. What I try and do to help avoid stalling is I try and keep their calories as high as possible while I'm dying down. So a lot of coaches, you'll see that they put together meal plans, just kind of cookie cutter meal plans where they don't really count the calories. And what I do is I give my clients macros, protein, carbs, and fats, and I make sure that, I know exactly how many calories they're having. So one of the things I do to avoid them stalling is I don't drop the bottom out on their calories. So a lot of coaches and a lot of competitors themselves, female clients especially, they'll just go on a plan that they'll get from bodybuilding.com or from an old coach or from a friend's coach, and they'll just duplicate that plan. And they may start out their prep eating, their off-season calories might have been 2,000, but they may go straight to 1,200 calories. And yeah, they may lose 10 pounds pretty quick, but then all of a sudden their metabolism's starting to adapt to that 1,200 calories, and they actually stall out faster. So that's one of the things that I like to do and I make sure I keep my clients' calories as high as possible as they're losing, and then I slowly adjust, when they do stall, because like I said, stalling is normal. And the other thing is too, I always start my clients eating as many carbs as possible, and I'll use some tricks here and there. I'll keep like a training day diet across the board, and then maybe one higher carb day. And when they stop, when their body starts to get used to that, I'll start some slight carb cycling and some highs and lows and stuff like that. So, there's a whole lot of different tricks that you can use. We could probably spend a whole podcast on that.
Is there like a certain level that you look for with someone? So like on average for a male, before they start their diet, obviously you want them as high as possible calorie wise. So is there like something that you look for in specific? Like, okay, for a man, a guy 200 pounds, he should be eating at least, 3,000 calories. Is there something that you look for? This way you know exactly what you're working with the entire time. Do you kind of plan for these stalling ahead of time, based off that?
I do. So, I wish everything was just so easy that I could give you a number, but, I can give you an example. An off-season competitor, hopefully they're eating like 14 times their body weight. Now, a lot of people listening can go plug that in and they're like, whoa, that's way too much. And some of them are going to be, whoa, that's way too small. That's depending on each person. But the whole thing is each person's different. So I might have 75-pound natural client who's eating quite a bit. And I might have, an NPC client that's big, that's not eating very much. A lot of it's dependent on muscle mass, their body fat levels, how much they have to drop, how fast they have to drop it. But generally I've just come to notice if someone if they're not super fat in the off season, if they just take their body weight times 14, I've done the math on a lot of those scenarios. And if it's any lower than that, I kind of worry a little bit too much. So I try and work to get those calories up before we start.
So basically the answer to avoiding metabolic adaptation is just pretty much having a good off season and really letting yourself eat. And but this is where I see like the catch-22, especially I guess this maybe works more with women, is that most people they achieve a lean body mass going into a show or whatever, then they reverse diet out of it and they look good. So now they're at that point where they look good, like the guy on the cover of your book, for instance. He looks good. He's 7 pounds, over stage. Does he keep kind of reverse dieting and keep building his metabolism? But let's just say he wants to maintain that exact same physique the way he looks. You understand my question? So like, how could you build your metabolism but still keep that lean look?
Okay, and that's depending on each person. So we'll use Chip. His name's Chip Cunningham. We'll use him as an example. So what I do is, once the reverse diet's over, his was 12 weeks. Some people might need 8, some people might need 16, but his was 12 weeks. Excuse me. And here's the thing: once we get all the way, he's eating 300 some odd carbs. Once we get to the point to where his body fat's starting to creep up, and he's like, hey, I want to keep it down, we might do a small mini cut. I think he's been off season now a total of like 6 months. So, you can do mini cuts here and there, but after the reverse diet period, I do try and add calories in every chance that I get. And during the reverse, it's usually, if everything's going right, I can add food every week. Once the reverse is over and the true off season begins, I might only add calories every 3rd week, because at that point your calories are getting so high. Carbs should be high or higher than they were when you're dieting, obviously. So the higher the carbs get, the more full your muscles stay. So you have to be real careful on how much calories you add, because if you go and start piling the carbs on, at some point your muscles stay so full and saturated, you do start to spill over into the fat cell. So I kind of watch for that. There's really no good way to watch, except you just kind of keep an eye on the scale and the mirror. And if things start to get to where someone's not happy, you can do a nice little 3-week cut. And you can usually cut pretty hard for 3 weeks, and then you can snap your calories right back without much fat gain. So that's something that I'll do from time to time if someone's wanting to shed a little bit of fat in the off season.
So let's just say I'll use Chip for an example. If he had a long contest prep to get down into shape, and he's reverse dieting for 6 months, let's just say that's equal to the amount of time that he dieted.
Okay.
if you got to that end point and he felt like, okay, I want to be a little bit leaner, and you started, a hard cut, doesn't that affect your metabolic adaptation pretty much?
It does. It does, exactly. I try and use a rule of thumb, even though it's, in this sport, there's always the gray area. But,
You could say that again.
Yeah, exactly. The answer is always, well, it depends. But in this case, it depends. So I think you were spot on with Chip. 6 months dieting, then he spent 6 months reversing. If he does diet a little bit for 3 weeks, that's not going to do much to his metabolism. It's not going to mess with his thyroid hormone or his testosterone levels. But if he were going to turn around and diet for 6 months again, obviously that would definitely not be ideal. So what I've noticed anecdotally through a lot of clients is after that reverse diet period, that's when the actual true off season begins. Because let's face it, during the 6 month diet for a show, people are going to lose muscle. So in that 6 month reverse period, most of the time people are just putting on the muscle that they lost. So then after the reverse diet, that's when the actual true off season begins, and you actually start adding new muscle, which is awesome, because the more muscle you have, the faster your metabolism is, and more thyroid hormones secreted. So that's actually a big part of getting your metabolism charged up even more, is to go even beyond the reverse dieting period before you start dieting. Not a short 3 week cut, but I'm talking about dieting for another show. And I think that's where people make way too many mistakes. They try and diet every year. And I mean, God forbid someone tries to diet, in the spring and fall all the time. It just wrecks them.
So we should kind of cover it. So reverse dieting, for those not, who may not know what that is, basically what reverse dieting is, and I'm going to have John go over this in a second, is basically walking your calories back up. So like we spoke about, Chip started his diet at 3,000 calories, let's just for argument's sake say, and they got down to 22 for contest. He got in shape on 22. So basically reverse dieting is going to be taking a period of time to walk those calories slowly back up. And what's your protocol for reverse dieting? I think I summed up reverse dieting pretty well. But what's your, I guess, kind of protocol, quote unquote, for reverse dieting?
Well, I have this term that my clients and a lot of folks that follow me on Facebook that I've used. It's called 10 carbing someone to death. And every chance I get to add 10 carbs, I will 10 carb someone to death. So, sometimes females can't they can't handle more than 10 carbs, but at least I'll get them 10 carbs. Depending on the guy and the situation, it's 10 to 20 carbs every single chance I get. But what I like to do is I like to take two factors into consideration: cardio levels and calorie levels. So usually the first thing I do is someone steps off stage. Of course they're going to go eat a meal that night, and they're going to eat some breakfast with their family and stuff, at the hotel or just wherever on Sunday. And that's fine, as long as I just tell them don't eat until you're stuffed sick. And then Monday, you just get right back on the plan that you had, your last plan, and you do that for 4 to 5 days. Get any spill off, any bloat off, and then from there, that's when I start pulling back on their cardio. So depending on cardio levels, if someone's doing a lot of steady state cardio, I like to actually cut that out pretty quickly. Myself, my clients hardly do steady state cardio at all. I think that's worthless. And again, that's probably a whole nother podcast in itself. So they don't really do a lot of steady state, but I do know there's a lot of clients or a lot of people out there that come to me doing, an hour to 2 a day. So I'll usually start cutting that back in like 15-minute increments. And then I'll slowly take their carb levels, usually if they're too low, and I'll add in 10 carbs for the first week. So that's usually my first move. If someone's fats are super low, I've seen females come to me eating like 12 grams of fat and eating 100 carbs. Usually I'll leave the carbs there and I'll start getting their fats up a little faster, because that's definitely a priority. Low fat is no joke. So depending on which macronutrient's lowest, I'll add those in. And then what I'll do is I'll actually watch the scale. So if I add 10 carbs to a female competitor's diet and I take 15 minutes of cardio off from her 2 hours that she was doing, I watch the scale for 5 to 7 days. And as long as she's not gaining weight or gaining a bunch of weight, I'll do that again. I'll cut back the cardio more. I'll add in another 10 carbs. And I slowly watch that. And every chance I get, I add food. The thing I try to avoid is adding food on top of them gaining weight. A lot of times people are going to cheat after their show and they really can't stick to the reverse, because reverse dieting to me is the hardest thing that there is in this whole sport to even do. So a lot of times it's kind of a balancing act to, someone went and ate a little bit too much on a Wednesday, and I might give it until Sunday, and then I add food again on Monday just to kind of balance it out. So it's really just kind of a watch and add type thing.
I know this happens especially with some of my competitors, women especially. What happens if you get to the point with the person where they just say, I physically can't eat anymore? Like, especially, I think this is more so with women than men, because I think guys, it's a little different for them. But especially women, they get to the point where they're having a certain amount of carbs and like, I just can't have anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And are you talking about when their calories are up, like in the off season?
Yeah. Once you're getting to that point where they're just getting out of their reverse dieting, they're reaching new carb limits that they haven't had yet.
Yeah. A lot of people listening, they're probably thinking, who the hell would even say something like that? Who would not want to eat? But especially for females, I have quite a few females that, we work them up to 300 carbs, sometimes more. And, they are stuffed full all the time. So one of the things that I recommend for them are to use foods that aren't so dense. So, a lot of people when they're dieting, they want to use the foods that are the most filling, like potatoes. Like you can eat a ton of potatoes when you're dieting down. So in the off season, what I try and do is I try and tell them, listen, just have foods that aren't so filling and so big. So maybe you enjoy some low fat ice cream, or maybe you have some kid cereal or some Cheerios, pretzels. Use things that aren't just so big and so filling, and it'll actually help you, not feel so full all the time, because I know that's definitely a struggle.
Yeah, I even have to jump in on this one because I've had that issue myself too. I know we said that this is mostly females, but when I get into my off-season levels of, carbohydrates going up, when they reach like 500 grams or so, I'm still not putting on weight or body fat. And that's, to me, that's the point where I literally just can't eat anymore. I suffer from that myself, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And especially for guys like you that eat a ton of carbs, I've actually had to get the fats a lot higher to actually just get their total calories up. And I know that blunts your hunger even more. You're probably sitting here thinking, I'm good. I don't want to add fats and bloat my hunger more. But
I told him that also. I told him you got to get your fats up then.
Yeah, definitely. So at least if you add 5 grams of fat, for example, that's a teaspoon of oil. That's nothing in your stomach, but it's as fats are they're a little bit more than double the calorie intake that a carbohydrate is. So adding fats does help.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about reverse dieting, a lot of people associate reverse dieting with carbs, but that's not necessarily the primary. It all goes back to the basics, calories in versus calories out, and you're trying to bring your calorie level up, not so much your carb intake. I'm just curious, do you think with carbohydrates, especially at the end of a reverse diet, trying to really prime your metabolism as best as you can, do you think there's a limit do you get to that point where just like, the point of no return with carbs, especially, like at what point do you just say, okay, enough carbs now, I just need to keep, bringing your fat up? Especially, I guess, for younger guys, younger competitors where they just need a ton of calories. You just start adding everything pretty much at that point, right?
Yeah, protein is the one thing I try not to just get sky high. I like to set protein levels at a gram per pound or a little bit more, just depending on the person, whether they're natural, assisted, or what their training looks like. If they're training a lot of high volume, their protein might be a little bit higher. I try not to just keep getting that up. I like to get it set and then really work on carbs and fats. So I do think there's a level with each person, and I think this as a coach, I have to watch really, really close. If I get someone's carbs up to where they're constantly staying full and saturated in the muscle, at some point the fats need to start coming up instead of the carbs just being piled on, because fats do a whole lot of different things in our body. So you start getting carbs too high and you can spill super easy. Your liver's always full, your muscle's always full, so fat storage just really becomes easier, especially on a higher carb day. So if someone's high carb during the week at the end of a reverse and they're deep into the off season, and then they go have a high carb day or a cheat meal or something like that, and their muscles and liver are already full, fat storage just becomes extremely easy. So it's always about watching that. Now I do like to, for a lot of my clients, I do like to carb cycle even in the off season. On off days, like if someone's off 2 days a week, I like to keep their fats higher and I like to keep their carbs down. And that's just so they're not just constantly pounding carbs all the time.
What do you think that carb level is? I mean, I know that's obviously a hard question to answer because everybody's different, but from your experience, what do you think that level is? 600, 700, 500?
Oof. Well, obviously each person's metabolism is different. So we'll use you as an example. If you're a guy that has a hard time gaining weight on 500 carbs a day, what a lot of people don't realize is, you probably have fast metabolism. You burn through a lot of carbohydrates when they hit your bloodstream just as energy. So for those carbs to actually reach the muscle and store is a lot harder for you than it is me, where I can eat 250 carbs a day in the off season, and if I have too big of a cheat meal or a refeed, I gain fat real easy. So because our metabolisms are different. So for someone like you, there's definitely a bigger threshold than someone like me. Plus insulin sensitivity comes into play. There's a whole lot of different factors. So that's just it. There is no set answer. It just depends on each person. I have females some of them eating 350, 400 carbs a day, but that's like super rare. Most of them, I strive to keep them in the off season. If I get a lot of my females up to, 15 pounds over stage and they're eating 250 carbs, a lot of them, I can't get them much higher, or their weight just keeps creeping on. Then we have to do a shortcut. So it just depends. I mean, it depends on how fast someone burns through those carbs in their body.
I go by feel. I was telling Pete this actually the other day. Me personally, I feel like when I get to that point of 500 carbs, I just feel like if I consume any more, it doesn't do anything different for me. So as soon as I hit that 500 carb point is when I start raising up the fat, and I might raise up the protein depending on how many calories, how much weight I want to gain. That's just something that I've figured out for my body. But as far as like reverse dieting and just metabolic adaptation and preventing that, should I push that level more to try to get those carbs up higher? And this way, when I diet, I could diet on more carbs?
Well, here's the thing. If you're getting your carbs up, and it seems like the more you just get them extremely high to where you just really can't eat anymore, what you actually may need to do is, like we were talking earlier, is add some fat in there, or someone in your situation, add some fat in, because when you add fat in, a lot of people are scared to have more fat in their diet when they're high carb because they think that they're going to store body fat more easily. But here's the thing. If you have high carbs in your diet and you're training all the time, which I'm sure you are, when you actually add some fats to your diet, your body will actually use those fats to actually fuel your body's energy. So say you're not at the gym and you're eating a meal that has 100 carbs in it, and we'll say 20 fats, for example. The fats will actually let your body use those fat as energy just to go about your day, and those carbs can actually be stored easier in the muscle. And that's something, I didn't learn that here just until a couple years ago doing some research. So, it seems like the higher you get your carbs, especially someone like you, I mean, you have a pretty freaking metabolism, it sounds like. A lot of people, it speeds their metabolism up more. I mean, I've seen people get their carbs so high, if their fats aren't high enough, they struggle to keep weight on. And I've even seen people lose weight raising their carb intake. Obviously, that's rare. But one of the answers is to get the fats up so your body can actually slow everything down in the bloodstream and use the fats for energy as the carbs are trying to store. Because if your muscle's depleted, your muscles have priority for the carbohydrates to store. So if you put some fat in there, your body can use that to fuel your daily activities.
Do you find though that when you have athletes that reach that point where they're consuming so many carbs and so many grams of fat and they're still not gaining weight, that I know you said you don't like to go too high with the protein, but do you ever find that you do need to add more protein in just based on the fact that, if you're eating 500 grams of carbs and well over 100 grams of fat, that they're getting so many grams of protein in just from trace sources from carbs and fats that maybe they need to eat more direct sources of protein?
Yeah, and here's the main thing with protein intake with me. Because, there's going to be a lot of trace protein that's just crap protein. Protein is only as good as the leucine content, and leucine is what spikes protein synthesis. So, say someone's eating, 40 grams of protein a day, right? And they're eating 500 carbohydrates. They're going to get a lot of trace protein from those 500 carbohydrates. So they may not be getting enough leucine per meal to optimally spike their protein synthesis. So with that person, I'll either have them drink BCAAs with their meals or throughout the day to help get the leucine content up, or we'll just go ahead and up their protein intake. So a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of foods out there that you need to eat like 30 to 40 grams of protein from those foods to get enough leucine. So yeah, if trace protein is really, really high from a high carbohydrate diet, I do like to raise protein or add BCAAs to the diet.
Genius,
Yeah,
man.
because I've found that when, like I said, when my carbs reach that high, I can only eat about 2 or 3 ounces of chicken in a meal because my protein requirements will get hit just from the carbs alone and the fat, So I'm actually end up eating less, good sources of protein, direct sources of protein.
Yeah, so you're actually, so per meal, if you drank, a scoop of BCAAs, which would be too much, but if you had some more leucine with each meal or some BCAAs, that would help get the leucine content up. But honestly, you would need to raise your protein to get enough leucine from the chicken, for example. There's enough leucine in like eggs and whey protein to have 30 grams of protein from that, but to only have a couple ounces of chicken and then the rest of your protein is trace, you're not optimizing protein synthesis and growth and recovery. So it would definitely be a spot to add.
It's so funny because it's so easy to overlook these things, as you're trying to focus on one topic, but then you overlook something like that. It's something so simple, but you definitely overlook it, and you don't think it, especially for someone like Pete and myself who consume that many carbohydrates, and you're told not to have, don't eat so much protein, you don't need it, blah, blah, but then you overlook something like that because those trace protein sources, like you said, the same protein from oatmeal is going to take a lot of oatmeal to equal the amount of leucine that you need compared to, eggs and whey protein. So.
Yeah, exactly. And, honestly, how many people are thinking about the leucine content in their protein meals, even though it's extremely important? Most people aren't. They're just thinking total amount of protein. So yeah, you're right. It's a great point.
All right, so let's move on now. So what are some alternative approaches to reverse dieting?
Okay, this is something I cover in the book that I'm extremely excited about. So I have two alternate approaches. I'm a guy, I like to experiment a lot because I get extremely bored. So, I'll sit around and I'll come up with different ways to do things. But, this last, it was October, I was sitting around and I thought, what would it take to get a person that was quote unquote carb sensitive or endomorphic in nature? What would it take to get them to be able to eat a lot of carbohydrates in the off season without gaining fat? So what I did is I took 30 people. Most of them were my clients, and then I also had like 12 people pay to come on board, and we did a 20-week experiment. And of course, this isn't in a lab; it's not a university. This is just me doing their programming and their dieting. And what we did is I set their protein at around 1 gram per pound, or just slightly higher. I set their fat levels. Most guys' fat levels were like 50 to 60 grams of fat a day. Females were like 40 grams of fat a day. And then I took their carbohydrates and I worked on raising them. So here was the whole special reverse dieting approach. I would have them alternate HIIT cardio with the weeks that I added food. So say week 1, I was going to add 10 carbohydrates to a female's diet. I had that client do HIIT cardio every single day right after their workout. And before that scares anyone, they only did 3 HIIT intervals, right? So if they were on the bike, they did 15 seconds as hard as they could with the tension up, and then they relaxed for 45 seconds and just pedaled. And then they did 15 seconds again. So they did 3 of those. So it was only 3 minutes of cardio. And they did that every single day for the week that I added 10 carbs. So what I was trying to do is offset any fat gain that someone might actually get from getting their carbs up. Now, remember, these are quote-unquote carb-sensitive, endomorphic people that just couldn't eat a lot of carbs before. So what I would do is add the HIIT cardio in, add their 10 carbs, and I would watch the scale that week. Then the next week, I would pull the HIIT cardio completely out, but we would leave their diet the same from the week before. And what happened was, I was just trying to see how high I could get people's carbs without them gaining fat. But what actually happened, and I wrote an article on this, it's on my website.
This is actually the article that I read that I started following you from.
Okay, yeah, this is a 20-week carb study. It's on my website, the team-gorman.net website. So what actually
I'll
ended
link
up
this.
happening?
I'll link that in the show notes. So anyone who wants to read it, it'll be
Yeah.
on here. So
This-
guys, check out the show notes on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
This is crazy, right? So what happened is people actually started to lose weight, and I thought, okay, I'm not trying to get people to lose weight. I'm just trying to get them to maintain, and some people are trying to put some muscle on. So they would have the week off, the HIIT cardio, and they would leave their diet the same, which was 10 carbs higher from the week prior. So then the third week would hit, I would add, it depended on the person, I might add 10 carbs, I might add 20 if it was a guy. And then they would do the 3 HIIT cardio intervals all that week. It was just 3 minutes. And then the next week they would pull the HIIT cardio out, but they would leave their calories up. So each 2 weeks their calorie levels were going up. And I would pull the HIIT cardio out after a week so their body didn't adapt and get used to it. So that was the key. So as time went on, I should have had this pulled up. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was insane. Most women raised their carbs like 80 carbs a day, and there was an average of 7 pounds lost over 20 weeks. Some females went from eating 150 carbs a day to 250. One of my guys went from eating 200 carbs a day to 400 a day, and he lost 18 or 20 pounds. It was crazy. And there was no crazy approach to anything. It was just 3 HIIT cardio intervals and, week on, week off, and then adding in carbs every time I would add their HIIT. Even if they were gaining weight, there were a few people that gained weight, but it was very minimal, 3 pounds over 20 weeks. I would still add the food. And what happened was their metabolic rate increased from the added carbs, but the HIIT cardio really worked to increase their metabolism to the point where it was so much they actually added food and lost body fat. Most reported strength gains as well. So, we always hear that question. I get it all the time. Hey, can I gain muscle and lose fat? Well, actually it did. It happened, pretty robustly over 20 weeks. So it's actually a tool that I use quite often. If I'm worried about someone putting on a lot of body fat, I'll use that approach. So that's one example of an alternative approach. And I put that in the book. I changed a few things and dialed it in a little bit different, but that one's in the book. And then the other approach is to actually reverse diet and stay. If someone's going to do a ketogenic diet for their show, I've actually taken a lot of people and kept them keto if they wanted to stay keto, and actually reverse them that way. And there's actually a lot of benefits to that. By adding in just fats and keeping them keto, it helps keep their hunger at bay, because most people that have done a traditional reverse diet, when you add in the carbohydrates, they stoke your metabolism so much that your hunger is just through the roof, and it's really hard not to cheat on the diet. So adding in fats and staying keto helps to blunt that, because you just don't feel so hungry all the time. Because when you eat 150 grams of fat a day, you're not going to feel that hungry. And then the other kind of a side bonus is that you can still eat a large amount of carbohydrates once a week, which we all need mentally. So, for people, some people they're still going to cheat. If they come off a show after they're done, they're going to have a mental rebound. Well, if they reverse diet and they stay keto, they still have a lot of room to store carbohydrates in their muscles. So if they mess around and they accidentally on a Wednesday night, they go get in the cupboard to eat, some peanut butter and some whey protein for their last meal, and they end up eating a whole box of cereal, because, we've all done it. There's room in the muscle for those carbohydrates to store, because they've stayed keto and they're somewhat depleted. So there is some advantages to it. Now, I'm not a huge keto lifestyle advocate. I know a lot about keto because I'm very, very passionate about trying different approaches, but it's not something that I go out there and I try and force people to reverse diet keto or stay keto for a lifestyle diet unless they want to. It's just a different tool to have that might fit someone's situation.
So when you have your clients refeed, do you still keep that high carb day? At what point do you get rid of that high carb day? When they finish the refeed, the reverse diet, or how do you go about that? So as soon as they're done off the diet, do you still have them keep that high carb day?
I have everyone still have a high carb day, as long as they're sticking to the diet. That's the thing. If people are cheating and they can't quit cheating, even in the off season, I don't have a high carb day diet or refeed diet. But most people, I try and keep it in there. And here's why. So say someone gets their calories all the way up in the off season, and say a guy's eating 400 carbs a day. he doesn't need 1,000 carb refeed because his muscles are going to constantly be pretty full and topped off. So, 1,000 carbs, a lot of that's going to spill him into the fat cell. So for most people, I'll just have, just a general rule of thumb is maybe someone only needs 100 extra carbs for their high carb day. So they might have 400 during the week, during training days, 300 on off days, and then a 500, high day. Because everyone mentally, they need a day where they can just eat more and, if they want to save most of them for a couple meals after the workout, what have you. But I do try and keep the high carb refeed day in there. If people are sticking to the diet well and not cheating, if someone's cheating, there's just no room for a high carb day. So, and the other thing that I've noticed too is when people try and keep their calories too low, I've seen people try and keep their calories way too low just so they can gorge themselves once a week and have these huge cheat meals or cheat days or big refeed days. But what happens is, if a female's eating 1,000 calories and she goes and has a 500 calorie increase, right? That takes her up to 1,500 calories. And that's her refeed day. That's like a 33% increase from what her metabolism is used to. So she's used to 1,000. She eats 500. That's a 33% increase from what her body's used to. So if you take someone that's like eating 2,500 calories in the off season, they have a 500 calorie increase. That's only like 17% higher than what their body's used to. So that's another good example of why people need to get their calories up in the off season, because I've seen people put a ton of body fat on by keeping their calories super low and then having these cheat meals and refeeds and higher carb days because it's so much higher than what their body's used to. So I've seen people get their calories up in the off season. They go have a cheat meal and they don't really gain any weight because their body and their metabolism is used to higher calories.
So can you use I don't really know what to call it, the 20-week carb experiment. Can you use that protocol, you think, for improving your metabolic capacity? So let's say you're at your reverse dieting point and you get to that point where kind of like Pete gets to. You think you could use that type of a protocol to try to push yourself to new limits without gaining and maybe feeling a little bit hungry?
Yes, I definitely think that someone can increase their food intake and their metabolic capacity. So the whole key is to be able to get the food up is with the HIIT cardio on that 20-week experiment that I did. It's to do the HIIT cardio for a week and then make sure you pull it out because your body is so good at adapting to whatever you throw at it. So then when you go to add it back in, it really raises your metabolic rate, especially with the afterburn period. So and it allows you to get your food up, but it also keeps fat gain to a minimum. So really if you think about it, what you're doing is just priming your body to be able to take in more food over time. And it does. It creates hunger. Maybe for you, that might be something to throw in because it really increases your hunger, and that may give you more of an appetite to be able to get your calories up. So the main thing is to watch. If you don't want to lose weight, you might have to add in more calories than 10 carbs a week. You might have to do like 25 or maybe even more. It just depends on the person.
And then for that 20-week carb experiment, it was only 3 HIIT intervals every day, so it's not like it's really physically demanding. So it's not really going to take much time, and it's not really going to take much. I'm not going to say effort because high intensity cardio is tough, especially the way you recommended on the ropes, and that's actually the technique that I usually do my high intensity on also is the ropes, and I actually love that for high intensity cardio. So thank you for giving me that advice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's 3 minutes after your workout, and anyone can do. And it's not 3 minutes long. It's only 15 to 30 seconds for one interval, and you only do 3 of them. But if they're done extremely hard, that raises your afterburn, the calorie burning and the fat burning levels so high afterwards that it really, really increases your metabolic rate. So just 3 minutes, I've seen studies that have shown, I think it was 5 hard HIIT intervals, burn more fat over the course of 24 hours than walking for an hour on the treadmill. So, I mean, it's short and sweet, but it definitely has its place.
Perfect. John, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast, buddy. I really, really appreciate you. We'd love to get you back on, actually, and talk about some other stuff. I mean, the high-intensity cardio is another thing we could definitely do. I mean, it'd be great to have you back on. You're a wonderful guest, and you're a really knowledgeable guy. I think we're going to touch a lot of people with this podcast, so super excited to put it out. Do you have any more information on anyone listening to this, how they could find you? I know your website's teamgorman.net. I believe I'm on it right now, yeah.
Yeah, it's team-gorman.net. You can look me up on Facebook. You can just search Team Gorman on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. It's team_Gorman. And my book is on Amazon. It's in the pre-sale period right now, so I'm handling all of those myself. But if you go to my website, it has all the pre-sale order information. The book's only $15.99 and like $4 for shipping. I'm keeping it cheap for everyone. I think this is a book that's going to help a lot of people, whether they're bodybuilders or just dieters in general. That's what I put it out for. So I'm not going to try and charge an arm and a leg for it. It's like 130 pages, and it's packed full of information in detail on basically what we covered in the podcast. It goes into extreme detail. So, yeah, that's where all the information on the book is. So I really appreciate you guys having me on.
No, man, it was a pleasure. Like I said, anyone listening to this, go to NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. We're going to have the show notes on here. Just click episode 22, and I'll have a link to the book in Amazon. I'll have a link to John's 20-week carb experiment in there as well, and plus all the topics that we covered. So, John, thanks again for coming on, bud. We really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Pete, do the outro, buddy.
All right, guys. This is Pete and Anthony, Team Gorman, New York Muscle Radio.
Enjoyed this episode of New York Muscle Radio? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, New York Muscle Radio.